Are making headlines now, and barely 24 hours after Uhuru Kenyatta was declared president-elect by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, the National Council of Churches, NCCK, has called for constitutional amendments to ensure more Kenyans are not left out of the electoral process. This comes even as a section of civil society called for Kenyans to be spared the campaign mood for at least a year.
With IEBC declaring Uhuru Kenyatta president-elect, the NCCK has spoken out on concerns that a section of Kenyans are increasingly feeling frustrated with the winner-takes-all political process that tends to breed animosity and resentment.
These divisions are expressions of unresolved grievances and perceptions of exclusion and denial of dignity for the opposition by the arrangement of power as defined in the Constitution of Kenya 2010.
NCCK has now proposed constitutional amendments that will bring inclusivity in parliamentary and other political processes for the benefit of all Kenyans, regardless of their political inclinations.
We recommend that Kenyans, through Parliament, amend the Constitution of Kenya 2010 to provide for A, an expansion of the executive to provide for the president to appoint a prime minister and 2 deputies as part of the executive of the winning party or coalition.
Other proposals by the NCCK include restoration of the post of official leader of opposition and his deputy in the constitution.
These positions would be occupied by nominees of the political party or coalition which meets a set criteria, who may be the presidential candidate and running mate who obtain the second highest number of votes in a presidential election.
Civil society groups, though questioning results of the just concluded repeat poll, insisted that Kenyans need to be given time off politics to heal from the rigors of the prolonged campaigns and the turmoil that accompanied it.
In our estimation, we need a minimum of 1 year to put together an independent, credible election management body. And so it is in the space of that 1 year that we are asking Kenyans to consider what their options are. And that is another sovereign decision of the Kenyan people that needs to be canvassed and discussed. So we are not calling for a coalition government. We need to make that clear.
At the same time, professionals from Meru and Tharaka Nithi also weighed in on the ongoing conversations on post-poll national unity.
At the end of the proposed national dialogue, Kenyans, as I've already said, should feel they will not be left behind in the next 5 years and beyond. In other words, the dialogue should not be aimed at distributing posts and goodies to satisfy a few individuals' selfish interests.
They spoke as the NASA team dug in, vowing to give the ruling team sleepless nights until their demands are met. Mark Namaswa, KTN News.
We have that on the dailies as well, and as we can see right here on the Standard, NCCK proposes an inclusive executive, and well, that would be interesting to have an all-inclusive executive. One of the things that has been faulted in our system so far is the winner-takes-it-all model that we have.
Certainly so, Mike, and I was just smiling when I look at that news because I had the privilege of serving at the Committee of Experts in 2010. The mandate of the Committee of Experts, under the then chairperson Zamba Gitonga, was to compare the 3 drafts. The Bomas draft, which was unanimously passed by the delegates, the Wako draft, and thereafter come with a harmonized draft. In its final recommendations at that time, the Committee of Experts recommended a parliamentary system of government, where we will have a national president who more or less was like a symbol of unity, elected by the people directly, and thereafter a prime minister who was the leader of the largest political party or coalition of parties in parliament, and deputy prime ministers. That was the system which was proposed at that time. And NCCK, which was part of the churches at that time, opposed this proposal. They were insisting that Kenyans' sovereign rights to directly elect a president should not be watered down. And thereafter, when the draft was taken to Naivasha by the Parliamentary Select Committee on the Constitution, chaired by Honorable Abdikadir Mohammed at that time, they were convinced by the church leadership that Kenya was purely, the people had wanted a presidential system. And therefore, those provisions which are now being called for, the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, was scrapped off. And that is how we ended up with a purely presidential system, which winner takes all.
Is that the solution, though, the expansion of the executive? Because the clergy makes it clear it's not really under some party arrangement. It's just an arrangement to ensure that there is all more inclusivity, more communities taking part in leadership. But taking a look at what the opposition is running for and the underlying reasons they state for what they're doing what they're doing, they say it's not really about the power. It's about the underlying issues, the electoral injustices in our country, the institutional injustices in our country. Is this really the solution for the problem the country is in?
I think the grievance comes out that it still comes out to the elephant in the room, which is the presidency. The presidency is still endowed with a lot of power to be able to influence, either directly or indirectly, most of the institutions. And particularly in this instance, there have been those claims that the IEBC has been under the manipulation or influence of the executive arm of government. So therefore, and some certain other legal philosophers have said this, when you have a situation of a bitterly contested presidential election, whereby the votes are almost split into half, like on August 8th, you saw Honorable Uhuru had about 8 million votes. Raila had about 6.56 million votes. So you find that in this system where the winner takes all, the winner takes the presidency. And the runner-up, even if you had as many votes or as nearly as possible as the winner, then you end up with nothing. You are not in parliament, you are not in Senate, you are out in the political code for another 5 years.
And I think that's where really we need to have this conversation as a country, because when we look at, if the August 8th results of the election is anything to go by, then we certainly have Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga almost split in the middle.
Oh, yes.
Then what happens is that if Uhuru Kenyatta becomes president, then it feels like all that NASA represent basically goes down the drain in terms of influencing and having the country move forward. So I think it's a conversation that we honestly need to have, such that now there needs to be some form of inclusion of the other half.
Yes, certainly so. And that is where the NCCK, they're coming up with these proposals of expanding the executive to make provision for those cabinet positions. But I think merely amending the constitution to expand the executive is not a solution in itself. The grievances outlined by NASA are very deep institutional and governance issues. So I think fundamentally that dialogue should be all covering all of those aspects. Issues of electoral fairness, issues of the system of government, the structure of the executive, issues of security, which was highlighted out, and even the issues of corruption. So I think that dialogue should be all expanded, not necessarily providing for positions for people to occupy them. That will just have been plastic.
More of a creation of jobs or creation of spaces just to accommodate people. But